Welcome back. We were discussing regulations, the elevation in regulatory risks in frontier markets, and we discussed a number of countries. Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania. With us here to discuss more regulatory risks is Tracy Kivunyu, who is a senior analyst at Telecom. And we're talking telcos. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you.
We've talked about regulatory risks. Are there any regulatory risks that is keeping you awake in the Kenyan's telecommunications sector?
Myriad.
Yeah, tell us.
So the biggest risks right now are related to dominance.
Yeah.
And we've seen reports in the past talking about regulating Safaricom, of course, being the most dominant in voice, data, and mobile money. But most recently has been the Kenya Information's Amendment Bill that's talking about separating the telco business from the mobile money business.
Yeah.
So looking at how this has been implemented in other countries, specifically the UK, where British Telecom went through this, it was looking for structural separation. And this would mean that Safaricom, for example, or any other telco would need to brand separately its traditional telco business from its mobile money business.
Okay.
While this may sound positive in the long run, we would need to appreciate the fact that Safaricom customers are largely there because of the M-Pesa portion of Safaricom, not necessarily the products that they offer. So as much as it may open M-Pesa to a wider pool of customers, it also reduces the stickiness of the customer on the Safaricom end. So this means that it could be detrimental for the telco valuation for Safaricom. Okay,
you talk about valuation. That's a very interesting conversation.
Sure.
If this bill goes through, by any whisk of a margin, I mean, it's wild. It's a while in the guess now. If these bills go through and actually they succeed in separation, and the Safaricom now has to spin off M-Pesa platform, how much of a haircut do you have to apply on your current valuation model on Safaricom?
Okay, it's difficult to say at the moment, but what I can say is that in my current valuation, M-Pesa, and this is a sum of the parts valuation, M-Pesa is 53% of my market cap.
Oh.
So if M-Pesa is already the dominant contributor to my valuation, it means that we're looking at an investor base that's actually buying Safaricom because of M-Pesa, not because of the telco business. So any weakness that is perceived on the M-Pesa on the telco business will then impact the share price negatively.
And consequently, your valuation.
Yes.
So Tracy, are you saying that if anything happens and they have to separate, the price we're seeing 27.28 could easily lose 50% overnight?
It will depend on how the spin-off happens.
Okay.
For example, if for example, this is largely hypothetical, if Safaricom has to also list M-Pesa separately, it would be more prudent for an investor to actually put their money in the M-Pesa portion of the business, not the data and the voice side of the business.
Assuming that is still left on the NSE.
Yes.
Okay.
If, for example, Safaricom still remains listed as is, then it means that investors would probably now start to revalue the traditional telco side. Whether you'll say it's 50%, that sounds rather hectic, but definitely the current valuation would seem aggressive in my view.
So then how do you factor, because this particular bill, so today it's in Parliament, tomorrow it's thrown out of Parliament, or it's still in Parliament and you hear the Ministry of ICT in collaboration with the CA and other stakeholders say, we think there's no problem in the telecom sector. How do you actually factor that into your valuation with regards to sum of parts? Do you increase your discount factor? Do you put an added premium in evaluating your valuation? How do you factor that?
Well, the perception of the company is very hard, of course, to put in your valuation. And right now as well, considering that the feedback we are getting so far from the regulators is rather positive, because you now have a unanimous disagreement towards the implementation of this regulation. I don't think it's the right time per se to start implementing it.
Okay.
Second, structural separation takes a bit of time. The bill is recommending 6 months, which sounds rather aggressive in my view.
6 years.
More often than not, if you factor in maybe Safaricom coming in to contest the regulations, it may take quite a bit of time, considering even the dominance regulations that we should have concluded by now are still ongoing.
But just an interesting point, you say now the regulators are unanimous in their voice. Does this mean that the Communication Authority and the Ministry of ICT are finally on the same page?
Yes, for the first time we've seen them speaking from the same script. So that makes a very solid case for the amendment bill to not go through.
Thank you for that.
Tracy, you talk about dominance. Let's go back to dominance. Dominance.
Yeah.
There was a report by Analyst Nation. Where is this report? Where is it sitting?
It's sitting with the Communications Authority.
Please look in the telco section.
Yeah.
Has it gone to Parliament?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
What do you think is likely to be an outcome out of this Analyst Mission report? Is it one of those reports that are going to go to the shelves, or something is going to come out of it? Do you see something coming out of it?
It's very difficult to say as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we were here when the interest rate caps bill was fronted, and we all thought it was not going to.
I was 100% sure. I could take a wager that the president was not going to sign the Banking Amendment Bill 2015.
So we need to pay attention.
Yes. So
and that's why I think for me it's introduced another element of uncertainty. Even with this Kenya Information Communications Amendment Bill 2019, you cannot be too sure about what's going to happen.
Yes, we can see what the rational decision is, but what will actually happen is a whole entire story. So at this point, I think it's better to deal with the facts, and the fact is that the dominance report is talking about ensuring that Safaricom, for example, is not able to successfully generate any dominance in terms of its voice and data business, be it by pricing. It's not clear how exactly that will be implemented, whether Safaricom will be withheld from doing any bonus promotions or offers to its clients specifically for usage. But of course, if that's what's going to happen, then that means that pricing risk is now something to consider.
But Tracy, you talk about bonus products. I mean, 2 days ago, I redeemed my bonus points for airtime.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, alas, I could not call off-net with the new airtime I got.
Yes.
And I concluded that the CAK, the Communications Authority, who is it, primary regulator, is it not that time they stopped approving those products, bonus products, because they entrenched this club effect? Can you imagine? I redeemed bonus airtime and I could not call off-net. Is that reasonable? Is that not ridiculous, Tracy? Sorry, Tracy.
Not to me, actually, but I would rather approach this discussion from the standpoint of how do you control innovation? Yeah. Because it is, as much as Safaricom, yes, is dominant, it's not dominant by stealing from customers, in my view, or stealing from other telcos. It's dominant by being very industrious and very innovative. So, of course, it has a duty to protect shareholder interest by ensuring that it continues to entrench that club effect. That is why we invest in Safaricom, because they're able to get the customers to stick to their platform. Whether getting the bonus promotions, for example, cancelled is the right way, it's difficult, but what we can say is that if it's implemented, then you're working on reducing Safaricom's network effect, and that could be negative for the telco side of the business.
Okay. So we're talking about regulatory risk, and it feels like it's better to work on facts as opposed to, going back and forth and creating scenarios, but you must, with hindsight. But when you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, because you look at Nigeria, you look at other countries in Africa, what are you telling investors? So do you buy more of Safaricom, or do you reduce your investment in Safaricom and start looking at the likes of Sonatel? Is it Maroc? Is it Airtel Nigeria? Are there better opportunities out there?
Well, as I look at the regulatory risk, we also need to look at precedents. Okay. If we look at that, we would say that Kenya has actually behaved the best in terms of regulation, the most rational per se. Countries like Nigeria have, of course, been very hectic on the telcos. Even countries as far as Bangladesh have also proven to be quite aggressive on the regulatory front. So for me, I'm now looking for a telco that has regulatory risk. I would say is an issue for all the telcos I'm looking at. So what you're looking for is regulatory precedence, where you've had a regulator that's been helpful in the past, and second, diversification. I think that's the more important one, because most of the regulations as we speak now are looking to ensure that the cost of data and the cost of voice is very low to encourage penetration and of course economic growth from increased access to communication. So any telco that's predominantly generating revenues from voice and data, of course, is going to go through quite a lot of turmoil, not only from regulation, but from competition in pricing from the second and third telcos in the spaces. So if I look at it in that way, Safaricom definitely comes out on top, because it's not only the most diversified in terms of revenue, but also in terms of margins, it has the steadiest margin. So it has the highest diversification in terms of mobile money, and it's now reaching EBITDA margin levels of 50%.
50%.
So 50%.
That's very impressive.
Exactly. That's only margins that you see from traditional telco businesses. And unfortunately for those traditional telco businesses, that margin is risky, because they have to start discounting for competition, where data prices and voice prices are coming off, and the regulatory effect of mobile termination rates coming off as well.
So Safaricom is still your best bet?
It is, but I would still also consider Sonatel to be quite interesting at this point. So Orange Money is still a very small part of their business. They're still doing around 6% contribution to revenues, but it has a higher opportunity considering that it's in over 4 countries. So there's that chance for international remittances. Second, of course, the penetration is low. And third, banking penetration is also still low. So there's quite a lot of room for growth there.
So more upside in that particular market.
They are also doing margins of over 47%, which is not bad, and trading at PEs of 10 times.
And so Safaricom PE is what?
It's closer to 20.
So
20 times.
20. Dividend yield?
Dividend yield, now it's a bit higher because of the special dividend, but standard dividend yield is 4%. But Sonatel gives you at least 7%, and it's pegged to the euro. So it's
and the euro peg has been very stable for the UM1 region. But Tracy, talk about EBITDA margins of 50%. How do they achieve EBITDA margins of 50% in an environment where ARPU has been declining? Is it that they're watching the cost? They're keeping the cost very steady?
Yes. So for Safaricom, for example, the cost base has been largely stable on the network side, but on the mobile money side, it's actually been coming off because of the transition in how customers are using the service. So you're seeing withdrawals coming off, more velocity in the platform, and for that reason, agency commissions start declining. Airtime commissions also start declining because customers are not topping up for M-Pesa. So the EBITDA margin for M-Pesa itself increases, and considering that apart from that there's not much depreciation or interest payments, the EBITDA margin you see for mobile money largely goes to bottom line. So that's why the margin tends to be very sticky for them.
What's the projection of ARPU? Is it likely to go down, especially on the voice data, M-Pesa?
I would, on the voice and data side, I would say yes. I would expect it to go down.
What about in totality?
In totality, I would expect the ARPU to stabilize. So I'm looking at,
and that's the average revenue per user.
So I'm expecting stability in ARPU, but driven mostly by subscription. So for me, it's more of the increased number of customers on the traditional telco side. On the M-Pesa side, it will largely be increased usage per customer.
What's your target price? Last target price on Safaricom?
27.40.
So it's fully valid.
Fully valid.
You need to revalue Safaricom.
Looking at the risks that we're evaluating now, I would prefer to take a more conservative angle, because we also need to appreciate the fact that there needs to be a transition for M-Pesa itself as customers move to business payments and they incur lower transaction charge.
When should our viewers expect your next Safaricom update?
Very soon.
Very soon, and when you do it, you'll discuss
I'll be back.
Okay, great. Let's have a short break, Tracy. And because the reason why we're taking a short break is because the market's closing. And let's have a closing bell and then come back.